So we're going to welcome you officially to day 2 of the Trapping Trash and Diverting It from Our Waterways workshop. We're so happy to have you back. This workshop, as you know, is all about capacity building and learning about trash trapping as a solution to the global issue of plastic pollution. And we want to welcome back those of you who we got to meet yesterday, and welcome to those of you who are joining us just for today. We want to thank you so much for joining. And we have just had each of you kind of sharing where you're from. I haven't had a look at the results now, so I'm going to put them on the screen to see where people are joining us from today. Whew, okay, so we had one of these yesterday, and so as Chelsea explained, this is a word cloud, so the bigger the word, the more people have entered it. So we have a pretty fair amount of people from North America spread across the US and Canada, then a few other Canadian locations listed within here, but we also have some groups joining from Namibia, Portugal, Malaysia, the UK, oh, it's moving, Romania, Netherlands, Brazil. That's amazing. So actually, I enjoy seeing this move. So if you just joined us, there's a link in the chat that you can go to, click that link, or go to menti.com and use this code to let us know where you're from, and we'll save a copy of this. Great. Okay, well, I'll go back to our presentation. That's amazing. As you can see, it's certainly been a great global workshop for us to meet all of you from here in our spot in Canada. So before we continue, I do want to say it's very important for us to recognize the history of the lands we call home. So as we have people from all over the world, we also want to extend our acknowledgements to the Indigenous and traditional past across all territories. For our team, we're actually speaking specifically to the land on which the University of Toronto operates. And for thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit River. And today, this meeting place is still home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. We're so grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. To reintroduce myself, I'm Susan. I'm one of the co-founders of the University of Toronto Trash team. I'll be facilitating some of the sessions today, and I'm joined by other members of our team who I'll introduce. And prior to my time with this work, I spent about over a decade with the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup, which is a program that also contributes to the International Coastal Cleanup. So we're joined by members of our team to also help facilitate and lead some sessions: Chelsea Rockman, Rafaela Gutierrez, and Cassandra Sherlock. Chelsea is an assistant professor at the University of Toronto. She's also scientific advisor to the Ocean Conservancy and has been researching the sources, sinks, and ecological implications of plastic debris for more than a decade. Rafaela has also spent a decade studying local development programs for low-income communities in Brazil to improve the socio-productive integration of waste pickers into formal recycling streams. And Cassandra has completed her BSc in Ecology and Evolutionary Biology just this past June, and since then has spent the past year studying floatable debris in the Toronto Harbour, playing a key role in developing data protocols for trash capture devices, which you will hear a lot about in our sessions later this afternoon. And again, I'd like to thank those who have helped make this workshop possible, that support from our collaborators and supporters. So I'd like to thank again Ports Toronto, Ocean Conservancy, and Environment and Climate Change Canada's Great Lake Office for their support of this workshop. So speaking of the workshop, we've seen these before, so I'll go over it quickly because I know we're eager to get into it. Our main objectives, again, is to include sharing the value of trash trapping devices and their role in fighting plastic pollution, and really motivating collaboration between all of us as we share the lessons that we've learned and learned from you, and then ultimately work towards building a network that works as we work independently but collectively. And those details we'll learn throughout the day. So yesterday, we covered our collective vision for trash trapping technology and heard some stories from projects currently in motion. And then today we're going to actually get more hands-on into the steps with some discussion, and then an introduction to the global network that we have mentioned over the course of yesterday. So we have a big day planned. I'll go into a look more specifically. We're currently doing our welcome and icebreaker. So when that wraps, we'll turn things over to Cassandra, who will go through some of the recipe and steps for building trash trapping projects. And then we're going to break into discussion groups. So on the next slide, I'll talk about how that'll work. So this will take place in 3 separate breakout rooms. When it's time for this, we will go over these instructions again. But the main thing to remember is once you're put into a room, you will stay in that same room the entire time. And then the facilitators for each topic will move every 30 minutes so that you get and learn about a new part of the puzzle. And then we'll start to talk things out and open the conversation. That will be followed by a break. We have a pretty packed first half. So we'll go for a break and then we'll come back and hear from each of the groups to learn kind of the key communications and questions that started to come up. And then we will wrap things up with Chelsea will be leading the digest to tie it all together. And then I will conclude everything with just a recap and reminder of our next steps. So in some of the sessions when there's Q&A, this is a reminder of how that'll happen. The breakout rooms might happen a little bit differently, but probably about the same. Those facilitators will go through their preferred steps. But when it's time for Q&A, if you want to ask a question out loud, you can raise your hand and we will look through the list and take you off mute in order. And then we'll go back and forth between those questions and anything in the chat. And we will also try to answer questions as we see them if we're able to. We'd also love if you share the conversation throughout the workshop. We are tweeting what's happening. You can use the trapping trash hashtag, and you can see all of the accounts that you can follow. The U of T trash team will be sending out the majority of tweets for today, but we'd love to hear from you. Okay, so we're ready almost to start, but we have a bit of a pop quiz. We are curious to know this is from some of our work, just to kind of get a sense of how much about trash trapping data you might already know. And you'll learn the story behind this infographic later today and how we got to these numbers, but we're just curious if you can guess which item made the number 3 spot. So we're going to open a poll in Zoom. So I'm just launching that now. Okay, so you should have a poll popping up and I'll give it 30 seconds or so to see how many people answer, and we'll see if we're able to guess from these options what the number 3 item was. And this is in Toronto, in the Outer Harbour Marina, where we were doing our work with Ports Toronto. And that was from the 2020 field season. Okay, we have more than half of you have voted, so I'll end the poll in about 10 seconds. Okay, 10. I'm going to count in my head. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, now we'll share the results. So the majority of people, hopefully you can see these results, half of you thought it was, just under half thought plastic bottles, followed by 22%. Oh, it doesn't list it in order, that's funny. 23% foam, 22% pellets, about the same, and cigarette butts is the last item. So I will stop sharing the poll so I can get back to the presentation. Okay, let's see if you were right. The answer was pellets. So we did find plastic bottles. We did find all of these items, but what we were surprised to see is that these were actually able to capture plastic pellets. Some of them are smaller forms of plastics. And you will hear a lot about the role that natural vegetation might have played in this, but I won't steal Cassandra's thunder for when she shares a little bit more about this, but I will turn it over to her now for our next session.
Okay, great. Thanks, Susan. So I'm just going to share my screen. Can everyone see my presentation? Awesome. Okay. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to this Recipe for Success session. So you want a trash trap. To start, we've outlined a recipe for you all to follow and adjust based on your tastes and what your kitchen can handle. For those of you who are avid bakers, you know that you have to follow a recipe to a T in order for the final product to come out perfect. But here we're just providing you with some rough guidelines to have a successful trash trapping project and giving you all the opportunity to learn from some of our mistakes and make note of some aspects we didn't quite consider. So, what do you need for a trash trapping project? So you'll need a trash capture device, a body of water to put it in, a team as passionate as you are, funding, a big bucket of motivation and optimism, and that's essentially it. Next, throughout the presentation, we'll go through the steps on how to utilize your ingredients for a successful trash trapping project. So first, you want to identify the problem. So if you're here at our workshop, it's most likely you know you have a trash problem in your area. You take walks along the lake, coast, or river, and you see there's trash accumulating. This very well may be a hotspot and a great place to put a trash capture device. But there's something else you might want to consider prior to just putting it in the first place that you see where garbage ends up. You want to assess your watershed. So this will allow you to gain an understanding of where litter is coming from. What are its sources? What types of plastic waste and litter are you most commonly seeing? You must first identify these in order to optimize on your location for your trash capture device to be able to remove it from your waterways. So depending on your region, there may be multiple sources, whether it's a river, creek, or it might be due to the high population density on your water body, in which you'll want to emphasize the community outreach aspect and encourage behavioral change throughout your trash trapping project. So within your watershed, there will be sources, hotspots, transports, and sinks. So starting off, source points. They are always a priority to place a trash capture device, as they'll catch and remove the litter before it further pollutes your watershed. Next would be sites of plastic transport. So these are usually clear pathways of where plastic moves from one point to another, and rivers are a great example of this. Next is hotspots. So this is where trash tends to accumulate at large rates, but it's not its final destination. So if left untouched, it might continue to travel through the watershed after a big storm or just due to the current and wind conditions. And sinks are where it's the endpoint for litter, so where it often gets accumulated and it doesn't move locations easily. So each of these possible locations of plastic that we just discussed often overlap. Sites of transport can be hotspots. Hotspots can also be sinks. And these are just general definitions to help you understand the fate of plastic pollution and to understand when placing a trash capture device in the region, tackling each and any of these will still make an impact. So next, you'll want to consider and understand what types of conditions you have in your water body. Is there a lot of aquatic vegetation? What are the wind and water currents like? Taking note of the seasons in your region. For example, does your water body become frozen over? This will help you think about what devices may be more feasible. Another important note is, does your water body have the infrastructure for a trash capture device? If so, what type of device can your water body hold? As Rafaela mentioned yesterday, we wanted to place a Mr. Trash wheel in our harbor, but due to all the construction that was being done near a large source point of litter to our harbor, it wasn't possible. So we had to rethink. So to understand the different sites and conditions in your area, you can try and Google local NGOs in your area to see if they've published a watershed assessment or reported certain outflows of litter from a certain point. Look for a watershed assessment model for your region. This may be provided by your local government to help you understand water flow in your watershed and can help identify potential source points, hotspots, transports, and sinks. And researchers are also working really hard in developing models to predict surface transport of plastic pollution to identify where they are accumulating the most given wind and current patterns. But until that is more widely available, and if there is no open data available to you from some local volunteer groups, or if there's no watershed assessment tool, we have developed an easy method to determine where to place your devices and get the most bang for your buck. We've developed what we call the visual audit. So this is where you just essentially visually observe the litter present in your water body by recording the types and amount of litter that you see in your local water body. You can conduct this a few times throughout the year or season to understand how litter accumulates and changes depending on the season or after a rainfall. This will also help inform you on the type of device you should be considering. Should it be mobile or stationary? This protocol will be found on our website and included in the resource package given after the workshop. So the next ingredient that we want to implement is creating your dream team. So from yesterday's presentation, we heard many stories from each of our speakers engaging with multiple different stakeholders, and we see that their projects are successful. So how do you create your own dream team? You want to identify local stakeholders in your region. This may be a marina, local government, volunteer cleanup groups, NGOs, businesses along the waterfront, or even fishermen and other avid waterway users. So as there are many economic and social implications with plastic pollution, you want to ensure to sell the benefits of a trash capture device, as it will help restore the water body to what it once was. And it's a long-term solution. As you bring people together and all these local stakeholders in this project, you want to make sure it reaches as many people as possible to help it grow. Next, you want to consider maintaining roles and responsibilities. So in your trash trapping project, you want to ensure that everyone feels that they have a significant part in this initiative and ensure that you have enough stakeholders motivated to collaborate in a project, as there are many roles to play. So going over the first one is the operator. So who will know how the device functions? Who can fix it when something goes wrong? And who has machinery to possibly remove and deploy the trash capture device if need be? Who can help assess best points of placement and help identify technical issues? Next to think about is who's going to maintain the CBIN, or sorry, the trash capture device in a broad case. Those who maintain it will be cleaning it out daily or however often the debris needs to be removed and maintained and ensure that everything is functioning properly. Next, you want to think about your waste characterization team. Who's going to collect the daily data using our simple data protocol, which we'll find out about next session? Who will collect the data using our detailed protocol, which requires quantification and characterization of the litter 5 to 10 times a season or year? And who's going to compile that data and send it to the network? And lastly, you want to identify who will be working on communicating the project to your local community and organize outreach events and opportunities around the device, who will help create signage and tell this story to your local community about diverting plastic pollution. So once you've completed your watershed assessment, you've created your dream team, it's time to pick the device all together in your team. So what seems to be the best device for you? You want to think about the environment you're in. Do you get snow or ice? What type of aquatic organic material is present in your area? What's the weather like? These are important considerations for the maintenance and storage of your device. Once you pick the device that you think is best, do you have an idea of where you want to place the device in your region? And do you have the capacity to operate it? For example, does it need external energy source? Can you provide this? Do you have a reliable form of labor to maintain the device over time? Based on the capabilities of your team, it might benefit more from a manual or autonomous device. Devices with larger holding capacities require less frequent collection, whereas smaller devices require more attention and collections depending on how polluted your area is. It's important to remember that fit for purpose statement. We want to emphasize that having a trash capture device, no matter the size, will still make a measurable difference. Okay, so now you have your team, your ideal device. It's time to start thinking about funding. What can your team afford? So many of the cheaper devices are valued around $10,000, and this does not consider maintenance or operational costs. Does someone in your team have the machinery if required to deploy and retrieve the trash capture device? You want to try and put your heads together and identify funding sources and plan for that long-term maintenance. And if there is little to no funding, but volunteers are available, you and your team can consider manual debris collection efforts using low-cost devices. Examples of this include booms or litter traps, or even DIY trash capture devices. You want to get creative. And lastly, you want to ensure that you use your device to the fullest extent. It's important to recognize that this is not only a technology that removes litter, but it can be used as a research tool and act as a centerpiece for education and outreach to engage your local community in a collaborative initiative. By engaging the public, you can bring awareness to solutions that individuals can have starting at the home and educate them on common sources and types of plastic litter in our waterways. Studies have shown that when outreach is partnered with innovation in waste management, the plastic waste reduction is increased more versus when it's just innovation with no outreach. Okay. So this recipe has been created from many different attempts, and it's still going to need tweaks and adjusting throughout the years as we discover new ingredients needed to make this as successful as possible with your help. Thus far, some of the things we've realized we needed to add and think about are maintaining roles and responsibilities. We learned that it's extremely important that everyone have their set roles and takes responsibility for what they're assigned to, or else the project is not as effective as intended. Make sure you maintain relationships with your team so that everyone is held accountable for their part. Establishing these roles will make the process much smoother in the end. Next is identifying your native vegetation. So we found that vegetation can damage our trash capture device easily if left unmaintained for a long period of time. And due to some local vegetation like pine trees, their needles they were small enough and able to breach the mesh and cause damage to our pump. So placing the device far from these trees would help avoid the issue. And lastly, we found in the fall that we had some dead fish accumulate in our bins. And if this occurs, you want to keep an eye on the area. For us, we realized it was unlikely that our device caused this, as the fish can outswim the current that the pump creates, and it was more likely due to poor water quality. This may not be the case for other devices, so it's important to note, and if this occurs more than once, you may consider moving your device to another area to avoid any impact on aquatic organisms. Okay, so with all of that, now I actually want to open the floor to all of you and hear from those of you who have had the opportunity to operate and own a trash capture device and hear what your lessons learned are. For example, was there anything you'd like to share that might be beneficial for new trash capture device owners to expect or anticipate when owning a device, and something you wish you had known before owning and running a trash capture device? Now, before I turn the floor over to all of you, I just want to remind you to save any questions that you may have from this session for the ingredients session, which is next. Our facilitators, they'll go into much more detail and from what I've just explained. So your questions will be better answered by them. So is there anyone who would like to share first? And if you don't want to raise your hand and share, you're welcome to just type it in the chat as well. Sorry, I'm just trying to open my chat here to see if there's anything going on.
Hi, Cassandra.
Hi there.
Hi, so this is Romel Nandi. I run the Trash-Free Waters program at US EPA. So I have not operated a trash trap myself personally, but we certainly have been involved with trash capture projects around the United States. And one thing, you may have touched on this, I may have missed it, Cassandra, but one thing I think people have to be cognizant of is the maintenance aspect. How frequently is the trash capture device you are using? How frequently does it need to be cleaned out? Is that something you can do yourself, or is it something you may actually need a professional contractor to do?
Right.
Even the installation aspect, some devices are fairly easy to install, some are much more complicated. And so I think those are aspects that people need to be cognizant of when they're choosing their trash capture device.
That's a great point, especially when it comes to seasonal differences. If you have to pull it out and put it back in, that might add a significant cost to the project as well. So it's a great point. I see someone else. If you want to unmute, I can only see town of the here. I will unmute.
Yeah, Cassandra, it's Jason.
I think someone was speaking, but they might be.
Can you hear me now?
I can, yes.
Okay. It's Jason from the Tunnel of the Mountains for the Thornbury Harbor. We just started with the Boating Ontario clean coastal clean, or the Great Lakes Great Cleanup program.
Great.
We just started last year. We're still waiting on a few things for the measures, but we were collecting it, and with a little bit of IT issues with the app from our IT department not allowing us to use it for the iPhone. But with the trash collector, like you said, having your knowledge of where to put the trash collector. We have the C-bin with this group. It's worked great. We did collect a lot of stuff. We did see some microplastics in, thinking we wouldn't. And it's nice to have your input to help us with the location. We just sent you a picture of the harbor. We knew where plastic would collect and along our one bank in the harbor. And it's been a great asset. And then we're starting to really try to promote it within our town. But yeah, once we get a little bit more of the package, just because it was such a slow, we were late getting rolled out into it. So we're just looking forward to be part of this. and moving forward with it. And my staff all know that we're going to be cleaning it out once a day. And like the previous speaker was saying, like the cleaning and maintenance, just to make sure it's done every day. If we know where the storm is going to be coming, then we have to just make sure it's cleaned out prior to the storm event.
For sure.
Or actually just taking it out once a month, or get a scrub brush and just cleaning it so it's actually not full of the sediment that just sits and collects on those devices. Just like any harbor boat that doesn't get moved, all that dirt just sticks to it. So just making it clean and presentable. If somebody walks by, then they can see it. So sorry, taking too long. So
No, that's great. No, all the things you're saying are definitely things to consider, especially when you're new to having a device and you find all these things out. So that's really great to hear. And it's a good point about the storm events. I know from when we were dealing with the seabin, I believe it was in June or early summer, the marina was emptying it out sometimes 3 times a day, depending on the location and where the wind was going. So yeah, that's really great to hear that your team's on it. I'm excited to see more.
Yeah, thank you.
Is there anyone else? I don't know if there's anything in the chat going on.
You've got a couple in the chat, Cassie. One is from Katie Register, and I invited her to unmute herself and share it if she wants to. If not, I'm happy to read it for her.
Sure. Yeah, this is Katie. Can you hear me?
Hi, Katie.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, so we worked with a group to install some sea bins, and their plan was to use volunteers to empty the sea bins daily or as needed. And that was the plan, but legal folks said no, it had to be paid, trained staff because of liability. So it's something that I encourage people to look into before they do their budget, because that made it really difficult for staff to do everything.
For sure. That's a great point. And yeah, that might be variable depending on the organization. So thanks for sharing that.
Cassie, you got another one from, well, you have one from Sally and one from Gloria. Do either of you want to unmute yourself and share? Okay, I'm gonna try.
Hi.
Oh, go for it. Hi.
Couldn't find the mic to unmute me. It's Gloria here.
Hi, Gloria.
Hi. I'm managing a project for an organization called Southeast Rivers Trust. It's a plastic preventing plastic pollution in rivers and aquatic environment project. And we're working with other 17 organizations across France and the UK. And so the whole purpose of the project is to trial and test a lot of different types of intervention, including booms and sea bins and cages and all this type of traps. But then once the funding will be over and the project will be concluded and we will have drawn our conclusions, what we are experiencing as a partnership is that it's really hard to provide long-term sustainability for all these interventions, because local partners are, not all of the local partners can afford to run to maintain the infrastructure in the future. So this is the main thing we are struggling with at the moment, because we wouldn't like to install something that works well just up until the end of the project, and then it's kind of led to itself because of funding issues. Thank you.
For sure. Thanks for sharing, Gloria. That's really important to consider. And hopefully we'll go into a little bit in the sessions as well, thinking about that long-term sustainable funding so you can keep those trash traps in your water bodies. So thank you. I see another hand raised. Would you like to go ahead and unmute yourself and share?
Hey, this is Sally. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me now.
I can. Yes. Hi, Sally.
Hey, I just took off my Bluetooth. Yeah, so we're doing some work with a marina here in on Vancouver Island, And this marina had previously installed a sea bin about 2 years ago, and they had done kind of their own data collection and figured that it was a good option for them. And then that's why we decided as a nonprofit to work with them and donate a sea bin to their marina. And now we have actually 2 in their marina. So they have 3 sea bins in total now. We kind of have a relationship where they have a maintenance team that goes out every day and empties the bin twice. And they have a workshop at their marina to obviously fix boats and things like that. And they were able to kind of refit something to help the sea bin installed on their property. And they don't have too many costs in terms of electricity bills. I know from speaking with the marina manager, but yeah, it's kind of the maintenance side we left with them, and external kind of maintenance costs they would cover, but we are with our project kind of donating the sea bins that we raise money for, and then that's our contribution plus the research side of it. So that's kind of a relationship that we worked out with them.
That's a great relationship, and it's great that you brought this up to kind of contrast what I just presented. Instead of just creating your own, you can go and find somebody who's already started and see how you can contribute and bring more awareness to your local community and add that data collection aspect. So that's really great to hear.
Awesome, thanks.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, I think we have time for maybe one more. I see a hand raised here.
Jeff Kerr here.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi. We're in Cambridge, Ontario. My company is the representative and the distributor for the lidded trap. So we've been watching intently.
Awesome.
My question, I guess, refers more to the municipal usage of the lidded trap and in the public awareness idea that municipalities like to have the public aware of the initiatives they're taking. And the lidded trap as a unit is designed to go into the catch basins to catch the garbage. They're not all that visible. So I think municipalities would be more on board with a lidded trap if they can bring it to the attention of the citizens by putting some kind of identification on, say, the curb where you've got the lidded trap saying this is a catch basin lidded trap project that may go over well with municipalities. Again, it's bringing the awareness to the public that the storm drains are carrying a lot of garbage down and into the watersheds.
For sure.
So having some kind of marker on the catch basin as a catch basin that catches garbage might help with awareness.
Yeah, that's a great point. And for people who are creating teams, again, emphasizing that outreach aspect. And that's a really great time to get creative. And as you're saying, Jeff, how do you bring awareness to something that might be a little more hidden, like a litter trap?
Mm-hmm. That's just a thought for the municipal people here.
For sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I think that's all the time we have for now. And I'm going to pass it back to Chelsea to introduce our next session.
Great, thank you, Cassie. I am going to share my screen. Hopefully everyone can see a slide. Cassie, you want to give me a thumbs up if you can, or just say yes?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. All right, so the purpose of this next session is really now to take a deeper dive into the 3 important, well, there are probably more than 3, but into 3 important aspects of owning and operating a trash trap. So some of you were already starting to allude to many of these questions, both yesterday as well as today in the chat. And we're hoping here we can start answering some of them for you through the presentations planned and also a Q&A. So within this session, we're actually going to split into 3 topics, and you're going to get to hear about each of them. So 3 breakout rooms are about to be created, and we will randomly sort you into 3 separate groups. The purpose of this is to allow for smaller groups so that you can feel more engaged and have more of a conversation. You don't have to ever switch breakout rooms. Once you're assigned to one, you go there, you stay there. And the panelists, the facilitators from each topic will come to you. So we will rotate and you'll stay. And once we're done, you'll go back into the main room and actually have a break. So let me just go over what this session will cover first before we send you off. So first of all, the session will cover ownership and operation, and this will be led by Mike David from Ports Toronto and Kathy Lammers and Andrew Belay from Trent Port Marina. The second session will be all about data collection and research, and it will be led by Cassandra Sherlock, who you just heard from, Rafaela Gutierrez, both from the U of T trash team, and also Sarah Kolar from the Ocean Conservancy. The third session is all about outreach and communication, and this will be led by Susan Debert-Zenny from the U of T trash team, Jessica Pellerin from Ports Toronto, and Robin Stegman from Ocean Conservancy, with the past working as Mr. Trashwheel. Twitter Mr. Trashwheel. She can tell you all about it and share her lessons learned. So just to give you a bit of what this session will look like. So each session will be run slightly differently, and that's just to mix it up, keep you on your toes, and each will be 30 minutes. At the end of each 30 minutes, again, we will rotate and you will stay put. Then you're going to have a 15-minute break. And then when you come back, there'll just be a quick overview highlight of the session. Purpose of that is that questions may come up uniquely in some sessions that aren't said in others, which might be something that the facilitators want to share with the group. So if something comes up in one of their 3 sessions, they'll have an opportunity to share it then. So that's how this session is going to run. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. And Anusha, who has been the person tweeting behind this, is going to now be the person who separates us into our breakout rooms and sends us on our way. So when you get invited to attend a breakout room, just click join and we will get started. Hey everyone, I think it is time to come back. If you're here, if you could just throw up a thumbs up or some sort of reaction by just clicking on the reactions on the bottom and letting us know you're back and ready to go. Awesome. Great. Okay. So the purpose of this next session is actually to finish up the last session. So the purpose of the last session was really to be able to dive into the weeds a little bit about what it means to own a trash trap. How do you deal with the ownership and operations? How do you manage the data collection? And how do you benefit from its ability to be a really good tool for community communications and outreach. So what we're going to do for the next 15 minutes is I'm just going to give the leads of each session some time to sort of report out on some of the highlights from their session. We realize you saw one of the 3 repeats of each session, and of course different questions come up in different ones and different points are raised. So the purpose of this is really to be able to have them share what they thought were some of the highlights. I think our data collection leaders are still in their room figuring out what it is they want to say. But I'm going to turn it over first to Kathy, who was leading the ownership and operations session, to tell us a bit about some of the highlights from that session. Kathy, over to you.
Great. Thanks very much, Chelsea. Yeah, it was really interesting. We had a lot of interesting questions come up, some overlap and some different in each session. I think one of the biggest ones was costs. People wanted to know, what does it cost to purchase these devices, and what does it cost to operate them? So I think we figured out that the LidaTraps, for example, we're talking about 2 different devices that we work with. The LidaTraps probably cost up to about $1,000 to install and operate. Maintenance costs are very, very low for the LidaTraps, whereas the CBIN, for example, could be $10,000 to $15,000. And maintenance costs are relative. The costs of operating and maintaining the CBIN are much, much greater than that of a LidaTrap. So that's something that people need to be aware. Obviously, there's all kinds of different trapping devices, much bigger costs associated with purchasing and then again with operating. So there's all kinds of options out there, but cost is definitely something that people are aware of. In line with that is another question that came up, or that we asked actually, is how many people obtained their trash trapping devices through grant money or through programs such as funded programs, or how many people just went out and purchased them. And interestingly, in all 3 of our different sessions, virtually everybody had grant money to help them get into operation with their trash trapping devices. Only, I think, 3 total over the 3 sessions actually purchased them themselves.
So that's a big consideration, and I think it's something that is an important lesson. I think it shows that people are much more likely to get involved initially, at least, in trash trapping if they can have some grant money. Government and perhaps even municipal government get involved and start some programs to make it more viable for people to start trash trapping. Another takeaway was research. I think across the board, a lot of people felt that it was important to be involved in the research, and that's such an important aspect of it. So it's great, especially if you've got grant money, you're more likely probably to be involved in a research project, but it helps to motivate the program. It helps keep your staff motivated, knowing that they're actually contributing to something. They're not just taking out the trash every day, but they're doing it for a reason and a purpose. So that's something that people seemed interested in, knowing about the research programs. And finally, the last one that we didn't necessarily get out of the program, the 3 sessions itself, but something we've thought about is that we've learned so much from, Mike and Andrew and I have learned so much from each other in these sessions, and leading up to all of this and preparing for it, we've learned so much. And we feel it would be really important to have some sort of networking opportunity out there, whether it's, there's many different platforms you can do it on, but rather than me learning something and then passing it on to the next person and the next person, if we had one resource we could go to where we could all share what we've learned as we go along, it could be invaluable. And that probably has to be an NGO or perhaps something like the Great Lakes Plastic Cleanup Project could help with that. But somewhere that we can all go to and just share information and get information. Obviously, manufacturers probably wouldn't want to provide that because they're a little bit in competition. But anyway, we think that that would be a really important thing too. So I think those are our major takeaways. And we just want to share it with you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kathy. That was great. Our next group would be the group that was looking at data collection and research. So I'm not sure whether Raphael or Cassie or Sarah will share, but over to you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
We can share together if necessary. So we have a couple different questions. Was all very interesting. Some of them was related to volunteers, how we can train them to do the data collection. And our suggestions to all of you, we have the training, we have some tutorials in our website with some videos, how to collect the data, what you need to do it, all the materials. But we also can provide some insights. You can maybe have a Zoom call or something like that if you have any trouble, and we can help you. If you are in the field, we could help you with that. But we have all the information. It's provided in our website that we will show later. And also we have some questions about, one was very interesting from John, the trash wheels, that he mentioned that the protocol is great, but I'm not sure that we could apply this to a large volume that trash wheel collects. And it's a very valid point. And what we want with the protocol is try to adapt as much as possible for all the different trash devices out there, trash trapping devices out there, and subsampling, it's a good way to do it as well. So we could start subsampling that would make your data collection easier for the waste characterization. And then we have another question about if there is a plan for the data to be uploaded by our network to be reported publicly to better understand the whole network's impact. And yes, that's our goal. So we want to provide reports and make everything public in our website, and people would have access as much as possible in all the data. And I think that's the main things. We learn a lot through this process, and I think if Sarah and Cassie wants to complement and say something that I forgot, but I think that was the main discussions.
Yeah, that was awesome. And we had one other question asking about Data Trapper, whether it will be on a global scale, And as most locations look like they're in Toronto, and that is for sure the case, you just need to, when you upload the app, Raphaela's email will be at the bottom there, and you just need to email her your location, your CBIN ID, and then we'll be able to add you on the app and you can collect your daily data.
Exactly. It's very quickly. You just send me an email, I will reply. I will put your information in the app. That's it. I think that was our main discussion.
Wonderful. Sarah, did you have anything to add?
No, just thank you everyone for your questions and contributions.
Awesome. Okay, then our final group will be the communications and outreach group. So that is led by Susan, Robin, and Jess.
Great. We had a lot of fun talking with people about communication ideas. Two questions that seem to come up a lot was one, a question about animals and what happens, like, are trash trappers going to affect marine life, and what happens? And I will say that generally, there isn't an issue. Like, the trash wheel, for instance, moves very slowly. So unless an animal was very sick, it would be able to swim out of the way. And a lot of trash trapper devices are similar. I will say, as somebody who has been in situations where a python crawls onto your trash trapper, or ducks decide to play in your conveyor belt as fun, it is something that could happen, and having a plan, both how you're going to address it in communications internally, and having somebody who's able for quick response to go out to that trash device and try to save that creature is really important to do, because you never know, like, somebody can take a picture of it and tweet it out, and all of a sudden 100 people have seen it before you've seen it. And so really being able to have a plan so that you can have a quick response, especially if your trash trapper is in a high trafficked foot traffic area where people are seeing it, you know, it's very possible that somebody else walking by is going to see it before you. So making sure you have that plan in place is important. And then the other question that we got a lot of people asking about was about whether or not having a trash trapper actually hurts behavior change campaigns, because people see it as a situation where, oh, that trash trapper is handling my trash, so I don't have to handle my trash. And I can speak personally, and then I can open it up to my co-presenters if they want to chime in as well, that at least for the trash wheel, we didn't see that. In fact, we saw the opposite, that being able to see the problem and having new attention being directed at that the trash wheel brought to the problem inspired a lot more people to look at ways that they could affect the issue of ocean plastic pollution at home. And so it instead was a spotlight that really encouraged people, and people necessarily like always saw themselves as part of the solution. And I think that's true just from communication, that when people are more likely to see themselves as part of the solution than part of the problem. So people are less likely to see it as like, oh, well, somebody's like picking up all the litter I throw everywhere every day, and more seeing it or like, oh, that's really cool. I want to be part of that, and I want to be part of that solution. I don't know if other folks wanted to chime in there. Jessica, I know you had some notes down.
No, I think you summarized it really well. Yeah.
Great.
Susan, anything to add from you?
Just echoing what Robin was sharing on that second question that popped up a lot too, is, you know, we're in Toronto with the CBINs, we're still a few years in, so we're newer to this, but even with that shorter time frame, we're still seeing the spotlight that it brings to the issue, and not so much that now the bins are taking care of everything, so I can continue on with all of the same things I'm doing. But that being said, I think that's a really interesting opportunity for everyone, is to think of what is that best message that gets to that aspect, that helps us realize that no one size fits all means that these devices are part of a line of different types of things, like community cleanups and working to reduce what's being created as materials. So there's, to look at everything as a holistic approach. I think what's that message that grabs that attention and focuses it that way. But it was really great to speak with everyone and hear some stories from groups of what they've been working with. A lot of similarities.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you all for your wrap-ups. Hopefully everybody felt like they got a lot out of that session in terms of really starting to dig into the weeds a little bit, I think, on trash capture devices and what it really means to own them, operate them, collect data, and use them as a tool for communications and outreach. Our final session of the day before Susan closes us out is really just an overview and a bit of a introduction into our vision of what's next for all of us together. So I'm going to share my screen. And maybe someone can just confirm for me, Raphael, since I can see you, maybe a thumbs up if it's working. Awesome. Okay. So our question, or the next step is the digest and what's next. So the purpose here is to tell you all about how we envision moving forward with trash trapping as part of the International Coastal Cleanup, as a partnership between U of T Trash Team and the Ocean Conservancy. So we started this workshop off by telling you about the problem of plastic pollution and projections of future emissions into our waterways, both freshwater and ocean. These numbers will continue to rise unless we intervene. We shared with you that there are many solutions to the plastic pollution problem, and that these all need to occur in parallel, and that they all fall into 3 general bins of mitigation strategies, and these are plastic waste reduction, plastic waste management, and plastic litter cleanup. And I think we can all agree that we absolutely need to focus upstream on plastic waste reduction and waste management, but because we have so much work to do, there will always be cleanup needed, at least for quite a bit of time. So because cleanup is a really important part of the solution, we want to help increase its power globally. So a recent study that we worked on suggests that in order to significantly reduce plastic emissions to the oceans, we need to increase cleanup by several orders of magnitude, from tens of thousands to millions of tons. As such, our goal is to help do just that. Although people power through local cleanups is amazing, we cannot clean up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with everybody out there collecting debris, but trash trapping machines can. And so we've been inspired by many of you in this room that helped initiate this trash trapping movement. Our goal now is to help motivate the use of more traps locally and monitor our impact globally into one data set as a measure of success towards our global goal. We know that across the world, groups have their own networks and projects. We respect that and we are thrilled for that. Our goal is simply to be a catch-all, to report total progress across the globe so that we can measure our impact on solving the global plastic problem. How will we do this? So we hope, well, right after this meeting, we're basically launching a trash trapping network under the umbrella of the International Coastal Cleanup. This will be similar to Project Aware's Dive Against Debris, which is a network of divers that collect debris across the globe and contribute their data also to the International Coastal Cleanup. So our goal is to add to the divers and add to the people doing shoreline cleanups with traps and add the data from traps to increase the amount of cleanup around the world. In a few minutes, we'd actually like you to help us name this network. Since we don't see this as belonging to us, we really see this as belonging to everyone in this room and beyond as we grow. Just advanced on its own, that's new. Okay, so soon we will actually ask you to help us name it. But the network will share protocols for counting and characterizing trash trapped. At present, our protocols, as you saw, are best suited for sea bins and litter traps. But we aim to work with all of you to modify our protocols to meet the needs of other types of traps. So we envision us being able to sometimes come to you, be able to get to know your litter capture device and help create a network where lots of different types of traps data can be going into our network. Working with all of you to modify our protocols to meet the needs of other types of traps will allow us to improve our models to estimate our total positive impact in a synthesized way for data reporting. We will provide tools to collect data sheets and free applications. So at first, as you've been told, the data will be collected via paper data sheets, which will be available on our website, as well as the Data Trapper app. Both are free, but soon it will also be available in CleanSwell. So we'll be switching over to the CleanSwell app, which right now is currently used for the International Coastal Cleanup. This application is also free. The data will then be part of the TIDES data set, which is completely open access and will be used to quantify our mass diverted as well as the top items collected. Our tools, because it's open access, also helps you keep track of and communicate your own local impact. And our global impact will be shared annually in the International Coastal Cleanup Report and also shared throughout the year in different ways via social media. And our goal, as I said before, is truly to build this together with our community, starting here with this workshop. So I'm going to put a link in the chat, and I want you to follow that link and go ahead and vote for the name of the network that you prefer most. I'm going to give you about a minute or so to fill this out. So if you go ahead and follow this link, I'll just pause for a minute and go ahead and fill out the survey, thinking about, now that you sort of see our vision, what do you think is the most appropriate name for this network? You'll see some examples within the poll that we've thought of, and there's also a place for new names. So I'll give a minute for that, and then I'll continue on. And of course, you can continue with the poll. It won't go away. So again, that link is in the chat. Give you a bit more time. Okay, so it looks like so far we've got at least 40 responses. I'm going to go ahead and continue on, but that poll is not closing until later. So you'll have still some time to fill it out throughout today, and we'll actually have a look at that around 4:30. So thank you so much for your input, because as I said, we do want to build this together. So the next question is, how can we stay connected? So we have the email addresses of everybody who came to our workshop, and we'll send out some information about how you can stay on our mailing list so that you can be on a mailing list post-workshop. So you will have an opportunity to opt out. We'll also have a web page that's full of resources for collecting and reporting data. So it'll have protocols for the visual audit, protocols for how we do waste characterization, both with the simple protocol as well as the most detailed protocol, data sheets, information for how to get the app, etc. I'm going to show you what that website looks like right now, but I will tell you that, of course, it's going to change as we sort out our name. But right now, that website is hosted on the International Coastal Cleanups, or the Ocean Conservancy's website, near where the International Coastal Cleanup is hosted. So you'll find this here. The name will change, as well as more information will pop on. So we're really excited for that. Other ways in which we'll stay connected, and I think actually this sort of reminds me of a comment from Kathy about how can we have some sort of a portal where we all can share lessons learned and ask questions and talk to each other. We've started a Facebook page. Of course, it will also change in name as we have a name, but the idea for this is you can use it to communicate with others as well as with us about ideas, ask questions, etc. So this Facebook group, you'll get more information on it after the workshop, of course, once we have a name for it, because this name will shift. And finally, we intend to run more workshops as we grow to increase our impact, both in different places around the world, noting different time zones. So, at one point we'll get up in the middle of the night so others don't have to, but also to reconnect and incorporate some of our lessons learned by having workshops, again, for us to come back to and discuss and learn more. And so we really cannot wait to help bring our work together to track and grow our collective impact. We want to thank you so much for being here. We are really thrilled to get started together. And I want to have some time now for Q&A. So before I hand it over to Susan to wrap up the entire 2-day workshop, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we wanted to be able to have some time for question and answer. If a question comes in that I can't answer, we'll actually send it over to who I think is best suited for that questions. So if we have some questions, you can go ahead and type them in the chat, or you're welcome to go ahead and raise your hands. These could be questions about next steps in terms of a network. They could be questions on anything that you've learned in the last 2 days that you didn't feel clarified. And if we have too many questions, we can try to answer them later within the Facebook group. And if we don't have any questions, we'll go ahead to our last session to wrap up. Any questions from anyone?
We have one in the chat, Chelsea, from Sally. She asks, can anyone recommend the types of grant bodies they approached if we wanted to expand beyond donations?
Sure, I can answer that for us, and then I'd welcome anybody else to chime in. So within Canada, where we have set, I think, Environment and Climate Change Canada, ECCC, has been a granting body for trash traps, as well as the Ontario Ministry of the Environment and potentially ministries of the environment in other provinces. And then, of course, there are different foundations, I think, that I would look to. In the United States, from what we've heard from talking to partners and colleagues, is that Sea Grant has provided some funding for sea bins. The NOAA's Marine Debris Program has a removal and prevention grant that I think is offered every other year, but Sarah can comment if I got that wrong. I think the EPA has had grants in the past for removal. Does anyone else want to chime in about other granting programs that they're aware of for litter traps? Florida Beverage Association. Yeah, so industry, actually, that's a really good point. Okay, and while people might be sharing, well, Cassie, I guess over to you. Do you want to give me that next question?
Sure.
I'm stepping on toes.
No, Kelly says, thank you so much for all the talks today. I learned a lot, especially from those who have installed the various trash trap devices. Are you aware of any community of practices people can join where they can share lessons learned and ask questions in a forum-like setting?
That's a great segue into what we were talking about. Yeah, so we're hoping that the Facebook group that we're starting serves that purpose. So ideally, people join the Facebook group that have different types of trash capture devices around the world, and is a portal for people to ask questions, share information through the private chats, and also through what they share, and it'll be a private Facebook group. We will also have an email address, which I forgot to mention in this last talk. It doesn't exist yet because it will be our new name, and that'll be another way to ask questions of us. So hopefully that helps. We're trying to create that forum because we agree it's so important. Other questions, Cassie?
No questions, but we have a comment from Katie. She says, great job, everyone. I learned a lot, and I'm very excited that you're joining with Ocean Conservancy instead of starting yet another separate data collection protocol. We need to encourage easier ways to collect and share data.
Yeah, I'd actually like to comment on that, even though I know it's a comment, not a question. We thought about this a lot, right? We are fully aware that different people have different apps and different groups for collecting data. We wanted to do this through the International Coastal Cleanup because it's already a group that's collecting this type of data. We wanted to add to it. Even if you have a group that's collecting data, I know you then have to send it again, but ideally, then you also send it to the International Coastal Cleanup once per year. This is actually akin to the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup in Canada, where the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup collects our cleanup data from across the country and then also submits it to the ICC every single year. So that's sort of what we see ourselves sort of synonymous to, as kind of a catch-all. So Katie, thank you for that point. And we also want to acknowledge that we thought about that too. And we're trying to do our best without trying to duplicate. And I think there's some extra information in the chat of other sources for funding. Any other questions, Cassie?
No other questions. I just encourage everyone to take a look at the chat. We got some great resources for funding here. That's about it.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I'm going to turn it over to Susan, who's going to close out this entire workshop.
Great. So some of this will be a repeat of actually of what Chelsea shared. So just to help us remember it, I just thanks so much, Chelsea. So a lot of great information and we're really excited to get started. So as we come to an end, I just spend a few minutes recapping what we spent today and yesterday, as well as the actual next steps for the network. Some questions in chat I'll actually be covering now, some specifics, as well as some resources that we'll be sharing, and then a very quick closing activity. So let's just have a look at a summary. So this is all of the different sessions we had. We covered so much in such a shorter amount of time that I'm sure we could have extended this. We got a lot of larger discussions and successful stories, and today we got into the nitty-gritty of things. But before we share our final details, just a huge thank you to all of the speakers who gave their time for us today and yesterday, as well as the support to the workshop from Ports Toronto, OSHA Conservancy, and Environment and Climate Change Canada. And also a special thank you to Anusha. If you've been on social media, she's been covering our U of T Trash Team channel and doing an excellent job. So these are all of the speakers. We heard from Cassandra today. We heard from Cassandra with the suggested recipe for trash trapping projects, and our lively discussions by Mike David, Kathy Lammers, Andrew Belej, Sarah Kolar, Cassandra Sherlock, Rafael Gutierrez, myself, Robin Stegman, and Jessica Pellerin, and with some facilitation by Chelsea. So this is the point in the workshop where we truly are turning it back over to you. And our hope is that you can now be motivated and inspired to continue to build the trash trapping projects and help contribute to this network that we're building. The collaboration right now is currently between the U of T Trash Team and OSHA Conservancy, but it's your participation that helped bring this collective vision to reality. And it's our goal that we have more local projects, such as ones you already have or are planning to get started, that we can all come together and increase this impact individually, but help synthesize this collective data into something bigger so that we can measure our global impact through the International Coastal Cleanup. I'll be sharing over email. You'll receive a resource package which outlines the steps that you see on the screen here. So for step one, we're going to send you an email the next day or so with instructions on the mailing list and more information about Facebook group, which is another way to stay connected. There was a question in chat about those who may have privacy issues with joining Facebook. That's what the mailing list will be, actually the main form of communication. Of course, having one or more trash capture devices is very important. And then looking at the protocols to collect data, you can use ours as a reference. And as mentioned, we are very aware that they will shift as we get towards other types of devices, and sharing that back so that we can share all of the results in a global annual report with open access data. So just a reminder, we'll put the link in the chat again if you haven't voted on the network name, that we will, as a group, be meeting right after you leave us to go through these results and start sending out all of this information. So if Chelsea or there we go. So links back in the chat again, that's great. And then just a reminder, so the website, that link was already shared. So this is the website, which the information will start to change over the next few days. But if you're super curious now and want to see what's there, that is available. And then once that's named, of course, the Facebook group link will come, and an email, an actual email for the network will also be created. And we're just waiting on the name. And then what you're probably very excited to know about is a resource package. So that'll be on the web. It'll be available online. We'll likely put it on, we'll have details where that is. And we'll send everything over by email. And this includes some of the existing data protocols, recordings of these workshops. So essentially this will be ready once the recordings are ready. So we'll aim to get those as soon as possible. And then steps, again, what I just went over of how to stay connected with those steps to join the network. So we want to thank all of you, of course, for coming. We're building a global movement, and it really was fantastic to see participants join from all around the world. And you might have guessed that we want to do one last question before we actually say goodbye. So again, another link in the chat, and I will start to share the answers. Just curious, what are you most excited to get started on? And even if that to you means what are you most excited to continue working on? You can take that both ways, and I will share those results as we see those come in. You're welcome to log off when ready, but it's been great to have all of you. So let me just go to the proper screen. Okay, so here are the answers now as people are coming in, getting the trash traps, researching, getting funding to help bring the trash traps in, lots of signage, education. Great. I'm just reading these out loud as they come in, and I'm going to have it pop into the chat to see if there's anything shared here. Perfect. Okay. Well, thanks again, everyone, for coming as these roll in. We will certainly be in touch with everyone. If you have any final notes you want to add in the chat, you're welcome to, but we are officially wrapped for these 2 days, and it's been great having you. Thanks so much. Goodbye.